What if I told you that the Mother of Dragons was destined to burn King's Landing from the very first episode? That every heroic act, every liberation, every "I'm not here to be Queen of the Ashes" speech was building toward the ashes. And that in Chapter 14, I'll show you the exact psychological moment where her descent became inevitable, years before anyone noticed. Stay with me, because Daenerys Targaryen's psychology reveals something terrifying about trauma, power, and how quickly saviors can become tyrants when the right psychological triggers are pressed. But first, we need to understand what broke her before she was even born. Daenerys Targaryen enters the world during a storm so violent it destroys the castle she's born in. Her mother dies giving birth to her. Her father, the Mad King, was murdered months before. Her brother Viserys immediately blames her for their mother's death, for the storm, for everything going wrong. And here's what's psychologically crucial. Before Daenerys takes her first breath, she inherits massive trauma. This isn't just about her experiences. This is about intergenerational trauma, genetic predisposition to mental illness, and being born into a family mythology soaked in fire and blood. Let me explain what this does to a developing psyche. The Mad King Aerys II. Daenerys' father was clinically insane, paranoid, sadistic. He burned people alive and found it sexually arousing. He was going to burn the entire city rather than lose power. From a psychological perspective, this matters enormously. Mental illness, especially severe disorders like psychosis and bipolar disorder, has significant genetic components. Daenerys doesn't just inherit a name. She potentially inherits a genetic vulnerability to the same mental illness that consumed her father. But here's where it gets complex. Genetics load the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. Daenerys could have had that genetic predisposition and never developed symptoms if raised in a stable, loving environment with proper support systems. Instead, she gets Viserys. Her brother Viserys is psychologically crucial to understanding Daenerys, because he's not just abusive. He's her only frame of reference for what being a Targaryen means. And I need you to remember this, because in Chapter 10, I'm going to show you how Viserys' voice never left her head, even after she killed him. His psychology became her internal programming. But first, let me show you what growing up with Viserys did to her. From earliest childhood, Viserys tells Daenerys, "You killed our mother. We are the rightful rulers. Everyone who opposed us are traitors and usurpers. We will take back what is ours with fire and blood. The common people are waiting for us to save them. Our enemies deserve to burn. Weakness is death. Trust no one. You exist to help me reclaim the throne." This is not just emotional abuse. This is systematic ideological indoctrination from the only family she has. In psychology, we call this enmeshment combined with traumatic bonding. Viserys is simultaneously her abuser and her only source of identity, safety, and belonging. She's taught that her worth is tied to Targaryen restoration. Violence is justice, power is her birthright. Anyone who opposes Targaryen rule deserves death. These aren't just beliefs. They're foundational programming that will trigger catastrophically later. Now, let's talk about her marriage to Khal Drogo, because this is where we see Daenerys' first major trauma response pattern. She's sold to Drogo by Viserys. 13 years old in the books, slightly older in the show, but still a child either way. The wedding night is rape. Unambiguous, filmed as such initially. A child bride being assaulted by a massive warrior. This is severe sexual trauma. And watch what Daenerys' psychology does with it. She doesn't break. She doesn't shut down completely. Instead, she develops what psychologists call traumatic adaptation. She learns Dothraki. She learns to please Drogo sexually. She eventually falls in love with him, or what she believes is love. This is called trauma bonding, and it's extremely common in abuse situations. But here's what's psychologically complex. Daenerys doesn't just survive the trauma. She reframes it. She transforms "I was sold and raped" into "I became a Khaleesi and found my power." This is both a survival mechanism and a psychological trap. The survival mechanism part, it allows her to function instead of being destroyed by trauma. It gives her agency in a situation where she had none. The trap part, it creates a pattern where she reframes trauma as empowerment instead of processing it as trauma. She doesn't grieve what was taken from her. She doesn't acknowledge the violation. She transforms it into a story of her own power and choice. This pattern will repeat throughout her life. Every trauma gets reframed as empowerment rather than processed as pain. And unprocessed trauma doesn't disappear. It accumulates. It distorts your psychology. Eventually, it explodes. When Daenerys walks into Drogo's funeral pyre and emerges with 3 dragons, something fundamental shifts in her psychology. This isn't just about magic. This is about her internal narrative crystallizing. Before this moment, she's a victim who learned to survive. After this moment, she's the chosen one, the special one, the one who cannot burn, the mother of dragons, the breaker of chains, destined for greatness. From a psychological perspective, this is where her grandiosity begins to form. Now, grandiosity isn't always pathological. Healthy self-confidence and believing in your capabilities is good. But Daenerys' grandiosity has specific psychological features that will become dangerous. It's compensatory, built on top of deep wounds of powerlessness, abuse, and rejection. It's absolutist. She's not just capable. She's chosen by destiny, special, different from everyone. It's fragile, requires constant external validation, and can't tolerate threats or criticism. It's tied to her value. Her worth as a person is inseparable from her destiny and power. It's isolated. She's special and alone, different from normal humans. This is the psychology of Messiah complex combined with narcissistic vulnerability. And here's what's crucial. As long as things go well, as long as she's winning and being validated, this grandiosity seems like justified confidence. It's only when she faces real challenges, real losses, real rejection, that the fragility underneath becomes visible. Let's analyze Daenerys' savior identity psychologically. She genuinely liberates slaves. She genuinely tries to end suffering. She genuinely believes she's making the world better. This isn't fake. Her compassion for the suffering is real. But here's where it gets psychologically complex. Her savior identity serves multiple psychological functions. It repairs her powerlessness. I was once powerless. Now I give power to the powerless. It validates her grandiosity. I'm not just special. I'm here to save the world. It justifies her claim to power. I deserve to rule because I free people. It provides identity. I am the breaker of chains, the mother of dragons, the unburnt. It creates belonging. The freed slaves worship her. Finally, she has a people. It distinguishes her from her father. I'm not the Mad King. I save people. So when Daenerys says, I'm here to break the wheel, she means it. But she also needs it psychologically. Her entire sense of self is built on being the savior, on being special, on being different from the tyrants. And here's the psychological trap I need you to see clearly. What happens when the people you're saving don't want to be saved by you? What happens when they resist? When they reject you? When your entire identity is savior and people reject your salvation, it creates massive cognitive dissonance. Your brain has to resolve this somehow. Option A, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they don't need saving. Maybe I should listen. Option B, they're too stupid corrupted to understand I'm saving them. I must save them from themselves. Guess which option Daenerys' psychology leads her toward? Let's trace Daenerys' violence chronologically and watch the psychological escalation. Early on, kill slavers and cruel masters. Violence is targeted, proportional, against clear oppressors, framed as justice and liberation middle period. crucifies 163 slave masters without determining individual guilt, burns the Khals alive in V's Dothrak, feeds a noble to her dragons to intimidate others, burns the Tarlys for not bending the knee. Late period, burns the Lannister army, soldiers just following orders, burns King's Landing, innocent civilians, plans to liberate the whole world this way. See the pattern? The violence starts targeted and justified, then gradually expands in scope and becomes less discriminating. This is what psychologists call escalation of aggression and moral disengagement. Early on, she's killing people who clearly deserve it by almost any moral standard. Slavers, rapists, violent oppressors. But with each act of violence, several psychological things happen. Desensitization. Each act of killing makes the next one psychologically easier. Moral justification. They deserved it expands to include more categories of people. Dehumanization. Enemies become less than human, easier to kill without remorse. Grandiosity reinforcement. I have the right to decide who lives and dies. Loss of restraint. The internal barriers against violence erode. And here's what's crucial. Each time her violence works, achieves her goals, it reinforces the behavior. She learns, when I burn people, I get what I want. This is basic operant conditioning. Behavior that's rewarded gets repeated and escalated. Mirren is psychologically crucial. This is where we see Daenerys' limitations and her response to them. She conquers the city, frees the slaves, tries to rule, and everything goes wrong. The Sons of the Harpy insurgency kills her supporters. The freed slaves struggle with freedom and some want slavery back. The economy collapses. Disease spreads. She makes political compromises she hates. She's trying to be a wise ruler, trying to balance justice and mercy, trying to listen to advisors. And it's not working. This is the first time her simple break chains, everyone loves me, narrative fails. The first time she can't solve problems with dragonfire. The first time she has to actually govern, not just conquer. And watch her psychological response: frustration, doubt, then anger, then the desire to just burn it all and go to Westeros. I'm not here to be Queen of the Ashes, she says. But psychologically, she's already thinking about the ashes. Because here's what Mirren teaches her psychology. Lessons she should learn. Conquering is easy. Ruling is hard. Power doesn't solve everything. I need wisdom, patience, and compromise. Lesson she actually learns. Ruling is frustratingly complex. Maybe I should just conquer and let others figure out the ruling part. My destiny is Westeros anyway. She never actually learns to rule. She learns that ruling is hard and frustrating, so she pivots to conquest. This is avoidance learning. When something is difficult and painful, you avoid it and do what's easier instead. For Daenerys, burning enemies is easier than the messy complexity of governance. Let's analyze Daenerys' relationship with her advisors, because this reveals important psychology. She surrounds herself with intelligent advisors: Barristan, Jorah, Missandei, Tyrion, Varys. She claims to value their counsel. But watch the pattern. She listens to advisors when they validate what she already wants to do. She dismisses or punishes advisors when they challenge her. Jorah gets exiled when he's revealed to have betrayed her, understandable, but also when he offers counsel she doesn't like. Barristan dies, convenient for her psychology, because he was most likely to restrain her violent impulses. Tyrion's strategies in Westeros don't work, and she increasingly dismisses his counsel. Varys expresses doubts about her judgment, so she burns him alive. This isn't someone who genuinely values diverse perspectives. This is someone who keeps advisors around for validation and expertise, but ultimately trusts only herself. In psychology, this is called false consultation. You appear to seek counsel, but you've already decided. You're just looking for people to agree with you. Why does she do this? Because deep down, Daenerys believes she's special, chosen. Her instincts are destiny speaking. How can normal people understand what someone chosen by fate should do? This is grandiose thinking preventing genuine collaboration and learning. And here's the psychological danger. When you only listen to people who agree with you, you create an echo chamber. You lose reality testing. You stop getting corrective feedback when you're wrong. Surrounded by people who either agree with her or are too afraid to disagree, Daenerys loses the ability to accurately assess her own psychology and decisions. We need to talk about prophecy and destiny in Daenerys' psychology. She believes she's destined to rule. Not just that she has a claim or that she'd be a good ruler, but that it's her destiny, fated, written in the stars. This belief comes from Viserys' indoctrination. We are the rightful rulers. Surviving the fire, proving she's special. Dragons hatching for her, chosen by magic. Successful conquests, destiny validating itself. Prophecies, house of the undying visions. Advisors telling her she's meant to rule. But here's what this does psychologically. It removes doubt. I'm destined to rule, so any doubts are wrong. It justifies actions. Destiny requires this, so it's right even if it feels wrong. It dismisses consequences. Destiny will ensure things work out. It prevents flexibility. I can't change course. This is my destiny. It creates entitlement. The throne is mine by destiny. Anyone keeping it from me is wrong. This is called magical thinking and destiny attribution in psychology. Instead of, I want to rule, and I should earn it through my actions, it becomes, I'm destined to rule, and anything preventing that is interfering with fate itself. Do you see how dangerous this is? When you believe you're destined for something, opposition isn't just political disagreement. It's opposition to destiny itself. It's cosmic wrongness that must be corrected. This is how you get from I want to break the wheel to I'll burn anyone who stands in my way. Because they're not just political opponents. They're obstacles to destiny. They're preventing the world from becoming what it's meant to be. There's this line about Targaryens. Every time a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin. Greatness or madness. This is simplified pop psychology, but there's a real psychological question underneath. Was Daenerys always going to end up burning King's Landing? Or did circumstances create this outcome? The answer is complex, and I'm going to spend chapter 14 showing you exactly how both genetics and trauma conspired to create the Mad Queen. But here's what you need to understand right now. The coin metaphor is wrong. It's not a flip. It's not random. It's not she was just crazy all along, or the trauma made her crazy. It's an accumulation, a process. A psychological trajectory influenced by genetic vulnerability, childhood trauma, and indoctrination. Repeated traumatic experiences, power without accountability, grandiosity without reality testing, violence rewarded and reinforced, losses without processing, rejection without resilience, destiny beliefs without flexibility. The coin doesn't flip. The pressure builds. The psychology distorts. The safeguards erode. Until the trigger moment comes and everything collapses. Stay with me. When Daenerys finally comes to Westeros, something psychologically catastrophic happens. Nobody cares. The small folk aren't waiting to welcome their liberator. They don't know her. They don't care about Targaryen restoration. They just want to survive. The nobles see her as a foreign invader with dragons. Another conqueror. Another threat. Even her allies don't worship her. They work with her strategically, but they have their own agendas. And Jon Snow, who does love her, has a better claim to the throne. For someone whose entire identity is built on, I'm special. I'm chosen. I'm the rightful ruler. People need me. This rejection is psychologically shattering. In psychology, this is called narcissistic injury. When reality contradicts your grandiose self-image, it creates profound psychological pain. Daenerys came to Westeros expecting welcoming crowds, grateful subjects, acknowledgement of her destiny, her rightful place, validation of her specialness. Instead she gets indifference, resistance, political manipulation, a rival claimant she loves, loss after loss. This is cognitive dissonance on a massive scale. Her internal narrative doesn't match external reality. And when this happens, the psychology has to resolve it somehow. Healthy resolution. Maybe my narrative was wrong. Maybe I need to earn this differently. Maybe there's another path. Daenerys' resolution. They're wrong. They don't understand yet. They will bend the knee or burn. Do you see it forming? Let's inventory Daenerys' losses in Westeros, because the accumulation is psychologically crucial. Losses. Viserion, dragon, killed by Night King Jorah, dies protecting her. Missandei, captured and executed. Rhaegal, dragon, killed by Euron, her armies devastated in the north. Jon's identity revealed. He has better claim. Jon pulls away from her romantically. She's rejected in the north. Her council doubts her. Varys betrays her. Nobody in Westeros loves her. This isn't just about loss. It's about the meaning of these losses to her psychology. Each loss reinforces. Westeros is taking everything from me. They don't appreciate me. They're rejecting me. They're trying to keep me from my destiny. And here's what's psychologically crucial. She doesn't have time or space to process these griefs. Loss after loss after loss without processing creates what psychologists call complicated grief or grief overload. Each new loss piles on top of unprocessed previous losses. The psychological weight becomes unbearable. And when grief isn't processed, it transforms into depression, into rage, into vengeance. Daenerys doesn't cry and grieve her losses properly. She buries them, hardens herself, gets angrier. I don't have time to mourn, she says. I have a throne to take. But unprocessed grief doesn't disappear. It distorts your psychology. It makes you reactive, impulsive, unable to think clearly. By the time she's approaching King's Landing, she's carrying massive, unprocessed grief, rejection trauma, and rage. She's a psychological powder keg. She just needs the right trigger. We need to address the genetics directly because it's controversial. Did Daenerys inherit mental illness from her father? Is Targaryen madness real? From a psychological, psychiatric perspective, here's what we can say. Genetic vulnerability to mental illness is real. Conditions like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and other severe disorders have significant heritability. Genetics create vulnerability, not certainty. Having a parent with mental illness increases your risk, but doesn't guarantee you'll develop it. Environmental factors matter enormously. Trauma, stress, losses, isolation. These can trigger latent genetic vulnerabilities. There are warning signs. Mental illness doesn't just appear suddenly, usually. There's often escalation of symptoms over time. So with Daenerys, possible genetic vulnerability? Yes, given family history, trauma and stress to trigger it. Absolutely. Childhood abuse, sexual trauma, losses, rejection, isolation. Warning signs over time? Yes. Escalating violence, paranoia, grandiosity, black and white thinking, inability to tolerate dissent, sudden snap or gradual deterioration. Both. Gradual psychological erosion with a final trigger that causes acute crisis. The question isn't, was she crazy all along? Or, did the trauma make her crazy? It's genetic vulnerability plus traumatic environment plus power without accountability, plus losses without processing, plus grandiose identity equals psychological breakdown. It's a perfect storm of factors, not a simple answer. Let's trace how Daenerys develops paranoia, because it's psychologically predictable. Early stages, normal caution in dangerous situations, appropriate distrust of known enemies, learning from betrayals, Jorah's initial spying, etc. Increasing suspicion of advisors, interpreting disagreement as betrayal, testing loyalty constantly, punishing perceived disloyalty harshly late stages, assuming everyone is plotting against her, trusting almost no one. Varys' actual betrayal confirms her paranoid worldview. Jon's reluctance interpreted as betrayal. Tyrion's failed strategies seen as sabotage. This is textbook paranoid development in someone with power and trauma history. The psychology works like this. Real betrayals happen. Jorah spied. Varys did plot against her. Mary Mazdura killed Drogo. Gives hypervigilance, develops, gives neutral events interpreted as threatening. Gives distancing from others. Gives isolation, increases gives. More vulnerable to actual plots, gives when plots happen. Paranoia validated, gives spiral, continues by the end. Daenerys trusts almost no one. She's isolated, suspicious, sees threats everywhere. And paranoid psychology creates self-fulfilling prophecies. When you treat everyone like potential traitors, they eventually betray you or distance themselves, which confirms your paranoia, which makes you more paranoid. Daenerys is caught in this spiral, and she has no one she trusts enough to help her reality test whether her fears are justified or excessive. Jon Snow is psychologically crucial to Daenerys' breakdown, and not just because of his claim. For the first time in her adult life, Daenerys falls in love with someone who sees her as an equal, not a goddess, not a Khaleesi to worship, an equal. This is actually healthy, but her psychology can't handle it. Why Jon threatens her psychologically? He has a better claim. This challenges her destiny narrative. He's loved in Westeros. They accept him naturally while rejecting her. He doesn't need her. She's used to people needing her for salvation, protection. He challenges her decisions. Respectfully, but he disagrees with her. He pulls away after learning he's her nephew. This feels like rejection. He's honest about his concerns. This triggers her paranoia. Daenerys wants Jon to deny his claim and support hers. Keep their relationship despite the incest. Always support her decisions. Help her take the throne without question. But Jon can't do this. His psychology, honor, duty, honesty, won't allow it. So Daenerys interprets his integrity as betrayal, his honesty as lack of love, his concerns as plotting against her. This is what happens when someone with narcissistic and paranoid features encounters a boundary. They experience it as attack or abandonment. Jon is trying to love her while maintaining his own values. Daenerys experiences this as rejection and betrayal. And given her psychological state, this rejection becomes the final straw. Remember I told you to remember Viserys' voice? Here's where it matters. Even after Daenerys kills Viserys in Season 1, his programming remains. His voice never left her head. We will take back what is ours with fire and blood. They're waiting for us. The common people. Anyone who opposes us is a traitor. You exist to help restore our house. The usurpers and traitors deserve to burn. Never forget what you are. Dragon. This is called internalized voices or introjects in psychology. The abusive, controlling voices from your childhood become part of your internal dialogue. Even after the person is gone, their psychology lives in your mind. When Daenerys is under stress, when she's hurt and angry, whose psychology emerges? Viserys. The paranoid, entitled, violent, they deserve to burn psychology that he programmed into her from childhood. She never fully processed or rejected this programming. She built her identity partly on it. I am the dragon. She modified it. I'm the good Targaryen who saves people. But the foundation was always Viserys' toxic ideology. And under enough stress, with enough losses, with enough rejection, that foundation cracks and the original programming emerges. Let it be fear then. That's not Daenerys the Liberator speaking. That's Viserys' programming activating. Let's analyze the Missandei execution as the immediate trigger for the breakdown. Missandei was Daenerys' closest friend, her confidant, her anchor to humanity. Someone who loved her not for destiny or power, but as a person. Cersei captures her, parades her on the walls of King's Landing, executes her in front of Daenerys. Missandei's last word, Dracarys. Let's break down what this does psychologically. Grief. Losing her closest friend, rage. Seeing her murdered, cruelly, powerlessness. Unable to prevent it despite Dragon's trigger word. Dracarys. Burn them all, symbolic permission. Her friend's last word giving her permission to use fire. Dehumanization. Cersei and King's Landing become pure evil in her mind. Loss of restraint. The last person whose opinion might have tempered her violence is gone. This is the immediate trauma that pushes Daenerys over the edge. But understand, it's not that this one event caused everything. It's that this event was the final addition to an enormous stack of unprocessed trauma, loss, and psychological distortion. The tower was already unstable. This was the earthquake that made it fall. The bells ring. King's Landing surrenders. Daenerys is won, without burning the city, without mass civilian casualties, her mercy preserved. This is the moment she could choose differently, and she doesn't. She burns it anyway. Let's analyze this moment psychologically, because it's the culmination of everything. What's happening in her mind? They surrendered, but they didn't welcome me. They don't love me. They don't want me. They're just afraid. It's not enough. It's never enough. I came to save them, and they don't even care. They love Cersei more than me. They love Jon more than me. Nobody here will ever love me. All I have is fear. Let it be fear. They deserve this. They deserve to burn. Make them feel what I feel. Make them understand. This is called narcissistic rage combined with trauma response. The bells represent surrender, but to Daenerys' fractured psychology, they represent final rejection. She didn't want surrender. She wanted love, wanted welcome, wanted validation. And when she doesn't get it, when even victory feels empty because it doesn't fill the wound, something breaks completely. This is also displaced aggression. She's not just burning King's Landing. She's burning Westeros for rejecting her. Burning for every loss. Burning for every betrayal. Burning because the pain is unbearable and making others hurt is the only thing that feels like power anymore. The psychology has completely broken down. There's no strategic thinking, no moral calculation. Just pure rage and pain expressed through fire. Here's what I want you to understand about the moment she decides to burn the city. This isn't a calculated decision. This is a psychotic break. A psychotic break is when someone's connection to reality becomes severely impaired. When their perception, thinking, and emotional regulation all fracture simultaneously. Daenerys, in that moment, is not seeing King's Landing clearly. She's seeing all her losses and pain, all the rejection she's experienced, all the people who didn't love her enough, all the threats to her destiny, all the injustice she suffered, and her psychology resolves all of this with, burn it. Burn it all. This is rage psychosis, trauma psychosis. Complete psychological breakdown under unbearable pressure. After months of loss, grief, rejection, paranoia, isolation, and trauma, her psychology fragments completely. What's chilling is Daenerys' psychology after burning King's Landing. She doesn't show remorse. She doesn't have a breakdown of horrified realization of what she's done. Instead, she's at peace. She's calm, certain, speaking about liberating the whole world this way. This is what psychologists call post-crisis consolidation in psychotic breaks. After the break, the person doesn't return to baseline. They consolidate into a new psychological state that incorporates the break. Daenerys' psychology has reorganized around a new worldview. I am the liberator. Those who don't understand must be freed from their chains. Anyone opposing me is opposing liberation. Fire and blood is mercy because it brings freedom. I am destiny. I am righteous. This is what heroes do. This is psychotic grandiosity with moral delusion. She genuinely believes burning hundreds of thousands of civilians was right, was necessary, was good. The speech she gives afterward isn't cynical manipulation. She means every word. Her psychology has fractured into a state where mass murder is liberation. This is profoundly disturbing because it shows she's not going to stop. This isn't one bad moment she'll regret. This is her new normal. Now I'm going to show you what I promised in the opening. Why this was inevitable from the beginning. Look at the psychological trajectory. Episode 1. Abused child sold into sexual slavery. Married to warlord. Season 1. Survives trauma through dissociation and adaptation. Births dragons. Begins grandiose identity formation. Seasons 2 to 4. Conquers cities. Frees slaves. Receives worship. Builds savior identity. Violence escalates gradually. Seasons 5 to 6. Struggles to rule. Faces complexity. Pivots back to conquest. Burns enemies. Grandiosity solidifies. Season 7. Comes to Westeros. Faces rejection. Loses allies. Paranoia develops. Violence increases. Season 8. Massive losses. Isolation. Psychological breakdown. Genocide. Consolidated delusion. Every single season shows escalation. Every season shows warning signs. Every season shows the psychology moving toward this endpoint. The signs were always there. I will take what is mine with fire and blood. Burning Miri Mazdur alive, threatening to burn cities in Karth. I will answer injustice with justice, crucifying 163 masters without trial. Burning the Khals alive. Burning the Tarlys for not bending knee. Let it be fear. Increasing paranoia and isolation. Black and white thinking, intensifying violence, becoming her first solution. It was always building to this. Not because she was just crazy, but because every factor that creates this kind of psychological breakdown was present and escalating. Genetic vulnerability, severe childhood trauma, no secure attachments. All her attachments died or betrayed her. Grandiose identity formation, power without accountability. Violence rewarded repeatedly. Traumatic losses without processing. Isolation without support. Rejection without resilience. Destiny beliefs without flexibility. Moral justification of increasing violence. Paranoid psychology developing. No reality testing or corrective feedback. This combination always leads to tyranny and atrocity. The only question was timing. What would be the final trigger? Missandei's death provided it. The bells were the moment. But the trajectory was set from the beginning. Let's talk about power corruption specifically, because it's crucial to understanding Daenerys. There's a famous saying, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But psychologically, it's more nuanced than that. Power doesn't corrupt everyone equally. It depends on personality structure going in support systems and accountability, previous trauma and psychological vulnerabilities, beliefs about the nature of power, access to reality testing. Daenerys had every risk factor for power corruption. Personality structure, narcissistic vulnerability, grandiose identity, black and white thinking, support systems. Everyone either worships her, serves her, or dies, leaves. No genuine equals. Accountability, essentially none. Who can check someone with dragons? Previous trauma, massive amounts, all unprocessed beliefs about power. It's my birthright. It's destiny. I'm specially chosen. Reality testing. Advisors afraid to challenge her. Echo chamber. Paranoia preventing genuine feedback. This is the perfect recipe for power to corrupt catastrophically. And here's what power does to psychology. It inflates existing grandiosity. I really am special. It reduces empathy, distance from consequences of your actions. It increases entitlement. I deserve this and more. It makes you believe your instincts are always right. Success validates everything. It isolates you. Everyone treats you differently. Hard to have genuine connections. It gives you tools to avoid processing pain. can destroy rather than grieve. Every one of these happened to Daenerys. Power didn't create her psychological issues, but it amplified every existing vulnerability until they became monstrous. Let's compare Daenerys' psychology to others who had similar starting points. Daenerys versus Jon Snow. Both have trauma childhood's identity issues. Bastard versus exiled princess. Leadership thrust upon them, loss of loved ones, power they didn't initially seek. But Jon has secure attachment to Ned, at least from Ned's side. Healthy role model of honor and duty, comfort with shared power and counsel. Ability to process grief with others. Humility preventing grandiosity. Daenerys lacks all of these, so power affects them completely differently. Daenerys versus Cersei. Both have trauma. Cersei from Robert, Dany from Viserys Drogo. Children they love intensely, paranoid tendencies, willingness to use violence, sense of entitlement to power, but their psychology differs. Cersei's violence is reactive, emotional, impulsive. Daenerys' violence is ideological, justified, calculated. Initially, Cersei knows she's cruel and doesn't care. Daenerys believes she's righteous until the end. Daenerys is actually more dangerous because she believes her cruelty is justice. Daenerys versus her father Aerys. The Mad King was paranoid, sadistic, grandiose, willing to burn cities. Increasingly disconnected from reality, Daenerys becomes paranoid. Check. Violence justified, different from sadism, but similar effect. Grandiose. Check. Disconnected from moral reality. Check. She becomes what she feared most. Not identical to her father, but frighteningly similar in outcome. This is the heartbreaking question. Was Daenerys' descent inevitable, or could it have been prevented? Psychologically, intervention was possible at multiple points. Childhood. If someone had rescued her from Viserys, provided stable caregiving, processed her trauma, completely different outcome likely. But this didn't happen. After Drogo's death, if someone had helped her process the trauma properly instead of framing it as empowerment. But she was alone with dragons in a wasteland. During Mirren, if she'd had genuine therapy, processed her losses, learned actual governance skills. But therapy doesn't exist in Westeros, and she had no one to genuinely help. In Westeros, if people had welcomed her, if Jon had been able to love her fully, if she'd had time to grieve her losses properly, if advisors could have reached her. But none of this happened. So practically speaking, by the time we meet her, the trajectory is set. The psychological damage is done. The patterns are established. Could she have been saved in Westeros? Maybe. If Jon had stayed with her despite everything, Westeros had welcomed her. She'd had months to process grief with support. Someone had been able to break through her grandiosity and paranoia with genuine love and reality testing. But that's a lot of ifs. And her psychology by that point made most of those impossible. The tragedy is that the child Daenerys could have been saved. The adult Daenerys was probably too damaged, too isolated, too far gone. Let's return to the fundamental question. Nature versus nurture. Genetics versus environment. What genetics contributed? Possible predisposition to psychosis, bipolar disorder, temperamental factors, intensity, passion. Perhaps lower threshold for paranoid development. What environment contributed? Viserys' abuse and indoctrination. Sexual trauma from Drogo. Repeated traumatic losses, power without accountability, isolation without support. No models of healthy governance. Constant reinforcement of violence. No opportunity to process trauma. The interaction. Genetics loaded the gun. Environment put bullets in it. Trauma pulled the trigger. Power removed all safety mechanisms. This isn't she was just born crazy. This is she had genetic vulnerabilities that, in a different environment, might never have manifested severely. If Daenerys had been raised in a stable, loving home, with therapy available, with healthy role models, with support systems and accountability, she might have been a passionate, intense person with some emotional regulation challenges. not a genocidal tyrant. But she got the worst possible environment for her genetic vulnerabilities. The result was inevitable given both factors. Why does Daenerys' psychology matter beyond fiction? Because this pattern of trauma to tyranny is real and recurring throughout history. The pattern: traumatized individual with genuine grievances develops savior identity, gains power. Power amplifies existing psychological vulnerabilities. Starts with justified violence against oppressors, gradually expands violence to anyone who resists, becomes the tyrant they opposed, genuinely believes they're righteous throughout. This is revolutionary leaders who become dictators, abuse survivors who become abusers, justice crusaders who become zealots, reformers who become tyrants. The psychology is consistent. Unprocessed trauma plus grandiose savior identity plus power without accountability plus black and white thinking plus violence justified ideologically equals atrocity committed with righteousness. Real-world examples. Being careful here. Stalin, revolutionary, becomes mass murderer. Pol Pot, anti-colonial fighter, becomes genocidal. Many cult leaders start with genuine spiritual seeking, end with abuse and death. The warning signs are consistent. I alone can save you. Anyone opposing me opposes justice itself. Violence is necessary for liberation. You're either with me or against me. They deserve what happens to them. Increasing paranoia and isolation, cannot tolerate dissent or criticism, see self as destiny. Fate chosen. Daenerys demonstrates all of these. Here's what makes Daenerys' story truly tragic rather than just villainous. She genuinely wanted to make the world better. She genuinely cared about freeing slaves. She genuinely believed she was different from the tyrants. Her compassion was real. Her desire to break the wheel was sincere. But good intentions without psychological health, without processing trauma, without accountability, without genuine wisdom, good intentions can lead to hell. This is what makes her story important. She's not a simple villain. She's a demonstration of how trauma creates psychology, gives psychology, seeks power, gives power, amplifies psychology, gives amplified psychology, creates atrocity, all while believing you're the hero. This is the banality of evil that Hannah Arendt wrote about. Not monsters who know they're evil, the people who believe they're righteous while committing atrocities. Daenerys never sees herself as the villain. Even after burning King's Landing, she believes she's liberating the world. That's what makes it terrifying. That's what makes it relevant. Because people who know they're evil are easy to identify and oppose. People who commit evil while believing they're good, they're the dangerous ones. They're the ones who create the worst atrocities in history. And they all have a similar psychological profile to Daenerys. So here's what Daenerys Targaryen's story teaches us about the relationship between power, trauma, and madness. Trauma doesn't excuse atrocity. Daenerys' suffering was real. Her trauma was genuine. That doesn't make burning civilians acceptable. Power requires psychological health. The more power someone has, the more psychologically healthy they need to be. Power without wisdom is dangerous. Power with trauma is catastrophic. Good intentions aren't enough. You can genuinely want to help and still cause enormous harm if your psychology is fractured. Savior complexes are dangerous. When your identity requires you to be the one who saves everyone, you can't tolerate people who don't want or need your salvation. Unprocessed trauma plus power equals disaster, always. This combination has created tyrants throughout history. The road to tyranny is gradual. It's not one choice. It's 1,000 small escalations, each justified, each seeming necessary, until you're burning cities and believing it's righteous. Genetic vulnerability plus trauma plus power plus isolation equals breakdown. Any one of these might be manageable. All of them together is a bomb waiting to explode. Reality testing is essential. Without people who can genuinely challenge you, without accountability, without ability to see yourself clearly, power corrupts completely. Destiny beliefs are dangerous. When you believe you're fated to do something, opposition becomes evil itself. Doubt becomes impossible. Trauma therapy matters. Not available in Westeros, but crucial in real life. Trauma that's not processed will eventually express itself destructively. Daenerys Targaryen is a tragedy. A demonstration of how someone with genuine good intentions, real compassion, and legitimate grievances can become a mass murderer through the combination of trauma, power, and psychological deterioration. She's not evil incarnate. She's a warning. A warning about giving power to traumatized people without support systems. A warning about savior complexes and destiny beliefs. A warning about how good people can do terrible things while believing they're righteous. A warning that we desperately need to heed. So here's my question for you. Do you see any Daenerys in yourself? The unprocessed trauma you carry? The savior complex that makes you need to fix everyone? The black and white thinking that can't tolerate nuance? The belief that you're special, chosen, different? The violence, metaphorical or literal, you justify because your cause is righteous? The inability to tolerate criticism or dissent? The assumption that anyone opposing you must be wrong? We all have pieces of this. The question is whether we recognize them, process them, and keep them in check. Or whether we let them grow, justify them, accumulate power around them until we become the tyrant we swore to fight. Daenerys' story is a warning, not just about her, about all of us. About what we become when trauma meets power without wisdom. About how good intentions pave roads to hell. About why psychological health matters more than good intentions ever could. Learn from her tragedy. Process your trauma. Don't just bury it in righteousness. Question your savior complex. You're not the only one who can help. Challenge your black and white thinking. Reality is complex. Reject destiny thinking. You're not fated for anything. You have choices. Seek genuine feedback. Surround yourself with people who can tell you when you're wrong. Never believe your cause justifies any means. It doesn't. Stay humble. Power doesn't make you wise. It makes you dangerous. That's the lesson. That's what Daenerys teaches us. Not through her good intentions, but through her catastrophic failure. Through the ashes of King's Landing. Through the tragedy of a traumatized child who became a monster while believing she was a hero. Choose differently. Be different. Or risk becoming her.